And as if you could tell up here, except for this thing that I have blocked out, what I do is I have a piece of paper that I move over each month so that I don't end up writing in my column what's going on in April, and it's actually July. But it says up here, these are the calculations. Use these signs for planting and all other things, somewhere in there. So that's what, I wish I could explain this right, the difference, but I'm not sure.
So astronomically means that the place of the sun or the moon, in regard to the planets?
Yes. Yes. And this is the astrological sign.
And that has an effect upon the crops?
Yes. Yeah. It does. Why? I wish I knew the answer. All I know is that people for generations upon generations, all the way back to the people who discovered this or found it whenever, have found that on certain days of the month, things grow better. And these are the days that they identified them to be. Yes?
How do you know that Aries and Leo are killing signs? You just know that, is that somewhere?
I have read that in a couple places, and I just sort of have adopted it, and I found out in my own gardening. Several years ago, a fellow by the name of Wayne Carrier had a little garden shop, little greenhouse out on Louisville Road, right near the airport. And I convinced him that I wanted to do what we call the Great Tomato Project. And we planted tomatoes, we seeded them, first of all, to the flats, because he used flats to seed. He didn't use peat pellets or peat pots, which are obviously easier. Then he would take the seedlings and place them into a peat pot that would grow, and then into the garden. We took it was an unscientific kind of scientific idea. We took a good sign and a good moon sign. Perfect. We take a good moon sign, a bad sign, a bad zodiac sign. Good, bad, bad, good, all bad, bad, and so forth. Now, Wayne said he found out very quickly that those plants that were seeded at the good, like on the fertile day in the light of the moon, you could tell a difference in them in 6 inches. I mean, I didn't know which ones they were. That was the control, but I wouldn't know. I just told him what I wanted to plant, but I didn't know which plants were which. So we followed those plants all along. In fact, he said that people started coming in, and he had them in the back of the greenhouse. And they said, I want those. I want those plants. He said, no, they're for a special project. And then he said that people actually started to taking them. And they take them up front, and whoever was checking them out didn't know that they were for the special project. So he had to move them over on his front porch. So then, when the time came, when the time came, we planted these tomato plants in the garden. The same situation. We planted a good plant on a bad day, and a good plant on a good day. And then when it came time to harvest, Wayne went out. He didn't know where they were planted. And he would take a tomato and cut it, and I knew where they were planted. He would take a tomato, and the difference was the tomatoes that were from the good days and the good signs and were planted all the way along, from seed to pellet to the garden. They were very solid. They weren't watery. I mean, that's what you want in a tomato. The meat was real dense, but he cut open a couple that were planted on the bad days, and the water just rolled out of them like turning on a spigot over there. That led me to conclude it works. So, killing days. Kenneth Dotson, who for years and years and years, many of you probably know Kenneth, we did a big feature on him a few weeks ago in the paper, was the gardener for the state of Kentucky. He also planted the governor's garden, governor's vegetable garden. He would come to me, particularly want to know when the bean days were, so he could put out beans. Now, beans that are planted when the sign is in Gemini, the arms, and the moon moon is in the light phase. I don't know why. They grow unbelievably. They produce unbelievably. It's just called the bean sign. And the people that I've read about, they say that the beans grow as long as your arms. Well, I don't have a very long arm. I've never seen a bean that long. But I do know that they just continue to produce and produce and produce. Why? How did somebody find this out? I don't know the answers to those things. But one thing I will say, you have to be sure that you're going to take care of your garden. In other words, I can't tell you this is a good day, which is not, to plant. And we get Keenan Bishop in here, somebody, and we chisel up a little place in the floor. And we say, oh, Phil Case said this was a great day to plant. It's a fertile day. Is a tomato plant going to grow on the floor? Well, no. You have to use some reason with it. You use good gardening practices, cultivation, fertilization, all of the proper watering, all of the things that you need to do. The only difference is you just plant on the right day, in the right phase of the moon. There are 4 signs. This I read in the Foxfire book. The very first book, Foxfire 1. Maybe some of you have seen that. It came out probably in the early 70s, maybe the late 60s. It was edited by a man by the name of Elliot Wigginton and his students at a college in Georgia. They went into Appalachia and they talked to people about these folk traditions. They found out there were 4 signs that were particularly fertile. And the way I remember it is, it's kind of a little acronym: signs, plant, thick, crops. Now the signs that go with that are Scorpio, that's the S. Plant is Pisces, thick is Taurus, and C is Cancer. Crops. Scorpio, Pisces, Taurus, and Cancer. They're the 4 most fertile signs. There are 2 killing signs, as we mentioned: Leo and Aries. All this will be on your sheet somewhere. Leo and Aries are the 2 killing signs. There are 3 signs that are just so-so signs. They are the Sagittarius, which is the thighs, Capricorn, the knees, Aquarius, the legs. Those are the 3 so-so signs. And then there's the Gemini, the bean sign. And we've covered the whole zodiac. We've covered the whole chart. People sometimes get confused because they say, okay, for me, I was born, my birthday is June the 1st. That makes me a Gemini. Well, they say, does that mean that that whole month, from like May the 21st to June the 21st, that's a bean month? Well, no, that's just the month. Gemini, that's the month. Gemini rules. Within each month, as you see on this chart right here, every sign rotates through the month. Now, all of this is based on a 28-day month, like February. It's not 30 and 31. That's why you get the rollover into the next month, and you find sometimes at the top of one month you find one sign, then by the end of the month you're finding it again. That's because it's rolling through the cycle. Sometimes there are 2 days that are ruled by one sign, sometimes 3. It just works out to where there's 12 signs and there are 28 days. So obviously there's going to be something that's going to rule more than 2 days each month. It won't be the same thing every month. Any questions at this point?
Well, now the almanac, I printed one off the computer. And certain days, it'll tell you the sign will change, like at 4:30 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night, and go to another change.
Well, I'm not quite
This
that.
one doesn't do that, does it?
I'm not quite that particular about that. Maybe it does.
Yeah, it does.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it no more pays attention to our 24-hour day than it does our 30-day month. But pretty typically you can be safe on it if it's an Aries day, so or whatever it is.
You said that almanac you have is easier to read than the others.
Yes.
Who's the author?
Let me find it. The editor is Peter Geiger, Geiger. And
It's called Farmer's Almanac.
it's called Farmer's Almanac, S'. And here's the address. P.O. Box 1609, Lewiston, Lewiston, Maine. And the zip code is 04241. And if you call up there, write those folks. Oh, here's a web address.
That's even better.
Excuse me. www, obviously, Farmer's Almanac, all one word, no punctuation, farmersalmanac.com. They will send you one of these little jewels for about $1. I've talked to these people, they're very nice. And all these people, they're different almanacs, do things different ways. You just have to finally decide, what are you going to do? You know, what am I going to follow? Am I going to say, well, this one says do this one says do this? I have found in my garden, not just theoretically speaking, I found in my garden that this works. And this works for me. And so that's just the one that I use. I'm not saying that no one else is not.
I think I've lost a sign. The so-so planting is what signs?
I'm sorry.
The planting that's so-so, not so good.
Yep.
What were those signs?
Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius.
Okay, I'm still missing.
Sagittarius,
Beans, that's Gemini.
beans are Gemini. General good planting is Scorpio, Taurus, Cancer, Pisces. Those are the 4 best.
And the not Leo and Aries.
Not Leo and Aries.
And that's all of them?
That's all 12 signs.
Oh.
And they rotate through each month. Some through for 2 days, some for 3.
Now, is there a possibility of, since Scorpio is a good planting day, does that mean either above ground or below ground? You just,
Whatever
the almanac, see, mine kept
Whenever
going
Scorpio
back
is
and forth.
ruling, you've got the 2 aspects. The best sign and the moon phase. The moon phase is going to be purely based on what you're planting. What you're planting. I forgot to mention the 2 flowering signs. That's where you count up to. And you all are a garden club, so you want a flower. Yeah, Virgo, the IRGO, that's the bowels, that's what it rules, and Libra. They're the 2 flowering signs. Now they are what they call bloom days. Had a guy that called me up all back 5 or 6 weeks ago. He wanted to know about planting cucumbers, and he had a day picked out. I said, you're all right according to the moon, but it's a flowering day. It's a blooming day. And I said, you know, it's not a killing day, so we'll see how that does. He said, well, I'll tell you. He said, I planted some cucumbers a few years back on a flowering day, and he said they were the most beautiful vines. They went all over the garden. They overtook the corn. They had the most beautiful blooms on them. Never had one cucumber. Never had one cucumber.
Beans do that too.
Yeah.
Beans,
If they get on a bloom day, I've seen it happen. I mean, you see what? My brothers and sisters here, and I'm one of these registered master gardeners. I went through the course with Ken and everything, and so I've done all of that, and I'm absolute supporter of extension. They will not endorse this. That's why we had to take the sign down before the video. No. Because this cannot be proven scientifically on a UK research farm. I said, I'll tell you what, if you all would just turn me over a barn and a garden and a little help for a summer, I'll show you. But so far, no good.
No takers, huh?
No takers. Because this just does not sound scientific.